Welcome to Nothing Without Us, stories and discussions about meaningful inclusion. We will talk about accessibility, true inclusion, and disability justice with stories, policy updates, discussions, and related commentary on the value of being accessible and inclusive. We believe life should be accessible for everyone, and everyone should be included in all aspects of life. I am your host, Annette Bourbonnier. I am a 70-ish year old woman with short gray hair and eyeglasses. I am sitting in a power wheelchair, and my service dog Kirby could show himself at some point during the podcast. This podcast is captioned. Please press the subscribe button at any time during the podcast if you have not already done so. It will not cost you anything, but it will help us make this podcast grow. You are also welcome to make comments in the chat and to give us feedback about what you do or do not like. We especially appreciate a thumbs up. Today, my guest is Paul DePace. He has held a number of positions in his professional life that address accessibility issues, but today he is here to talk about the Paralympics. Paul was the former president of International Wheelchair and Sports Federation and a former member of the International Paralympic Committee, serving at 14 Paralympic Games in various roles. He is a member of the Paralympic Order, the highest honor that can be bestowed on anyone involved in the Paralympic movement. He is here today to tell us about the Paralympic Games being held in Paris right now. Thank you for coming to talk with us, Paul.
Well, thank you for having me. That's quite an introduction. Thank you.
I only say what's true. I edited out the rest.
Good to good to hear. Yeah, the Paralympic Games are something that's been the focus of my life for a long time. It
Right.
celebrates those with disabilities that strive to become athletes, but it also creates a stage to draw attention to persons with disabilities and then be able to present the message beyond that.
Right.
The games, those many of you may have watched the games, the Olympic Games. We always considered that as a prelude to the Paralympic Games,
I like that.
drawing attention to that. And Paris is a great venue for that. As you can see, they've done quite a stage job of opening ceremonies, both for the Paralympics and the Olympics. But
Really, the athletes' parade going down the Champs-Élysées. I mean, that must have been so exciting.
it is, and unfortunately, although I was credentialed for these games, I was not able to make it. My job would have been there as to present medals, and that's the second best thing, in my opinion, to winning a medal is being able to present it to a person that has achieved the gold, silver, or bronze.
Right. Can I say another thing about the venue too? I'm a big tennis fan, including wheelchair tennis, and they are playing at Roland Garros, where the French Open is played, which is also truly awesome.
You can't you can't beat that. They have done
That's
a
right.
spectacular job and set a new bar for the presentation of the athletes and the presentation of the games. And LA in 28 is really going to have to strive to come up to that level. I'm sure
Yeah.
they can. I'm sure Hollywood will very much be involved in 28.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, you and so many others over the years have brought the Paralympics to the level of competition now that's comparable to the Olympics, which is the meaning of Paralympics. Can you talk a little bit about the meaningfulness of sports and Paralympic movement to people with disabilities?
Yes, thanks. It's the Paralympics really had its start in the UK with at a place called Stoke Manville Rehabilitation Center. It's where those soldiers that came back from World War II with disability went to rehab, and the individual there, the doctor there, instituted a sports program, pretty simple sports in those days, a little wheelchair basketball, archery. Um, but the movement came to the US in the 60s and expanded. It actually came to the US, and the center were in two places, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, where basketball program flourished, and in New York at the Bulliver School of Watchmaking, because in those days they thought that that was a good vocation for persons with disabilities, is repairing watches. In the days when you used to repair watches,
Right.
we have worked to expand on that and put that behind us. And it has grown with the Paralympic Games from when they were in Tokyo in 60 to Toronto in 76, and the games from 88 on in Seoul, Korea took off to become a larger and larger stage over the course of the years, to Barcelona, to Atlanta, to Sydney, to Athens, to Beijing. So with the games in Seoul in 88, they became the same venue as the Olympic Games, followed only by 2 weeks. So as that stage expanded and brought attention not only to the athletes that achieved at a high level, but it also gave the opportunity for attention to disability in itself. And we were able to use that to tell the story of how individuals that were not athletes, the services, the emphasis on accessibility, all of the aspects of improving the lives of persons with disabilities in general. I can tell you that having been at all of these venues over the course of the years, that it is, you could see, and being in the construction business, the project management business, I can see the way each one of these cities has improved the accessibility, made major strides in the improvement of the accessibility of not only the venues of competition, but of the cities themselves, and the residences for the athletes. So a great emphasis, and continues to be that way.
Do you see the involvement of people with disabilities in sports, and even more so in the Paralympic movement, as a way of, improving their health and improving their image, not only to others, but of themselves, in their lives?
Certainly, the athletes, by their achievements, really set the stage. Maybe some of your listeners caught the wheelchair rugby game yesterday, US versus Canada, always
That's a hot one.
rivalry. And
Yeah.
you have to see wheelchair rugby because it is a sport played by quadriplegics, but is a high-speed, full contact sport. Started in Canada, was at one time called murder ball, because that's what it is. And to see quads speed up and down the court, knock the hell out of each other, and be successful in that, it shows you what those individuals can do, and brings your attention to persons that are not necessarily athletes, and what they can do. It was interesting, for the first time, the US team had a woman as one of the athletes in the wheelchair rugby.
Oh, wow.
She scored, I think, half a dozen times over the course of the 50 points that the US scored.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I wish I had seen it. I'm sorry I missed that one. I'll look for it on YouTube. I'm sure it's going to be up there in
I think
highlights.
YouTube and USA Network,
Yeah.
and Paramount Network, and some other links that you said you were going to send out.
Right. So, yeah. Well, that's the other part of this. One thing that's bothered me for years is that Paralympics and other wheelchair sports were never televised in the US the way they've been for a long time in the rest of the world. Now this year they are. And so tell me about that change. This is really exciting to me.
Yes. In 1996, the games were in Atlanta. And it was interesting. The link, the board of directors for the games in Atlanta had a number of high profile individuals there. And there is a rehabilitation center in Atlanta that was named because one of the individuals, I can't think of the name at the moment, um, but one of the individuals with disability was a son of some high profile people in Atlanta. Um, and on the board of directors with us was the CEO of Home Depot, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, the CEO of a major road building company. We had the success in Atlanta gave us the momentum to move on to lobby the US Congress for better attention to amateur athletes with disability. At that time, the Ted Stevens Olympic and Amateur Sport Act was up for revision in 1998. So we spent some time in building on the momentum from Atlanta. We spent time in Washington with a number of the individuals there, including Senator Stevens, to bring attention to the athletes and bring about some change in the United States Olympic Committee. So in 2001, the U.S. Olympic Committee formally recognized and started to assist with the programs of the Paralympics. And then, as we all may know now, they changed their constitution in, I think it's 2021, to now include in the name as well as in the program and mission the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And that, I think, has drawn attention to the sponsors for the Olympic Committee. And you can see a number of the athletes actually appearing in ads. And the sponsors from the Olympic Committee, and the Olympic Committee is also, is of course, only privately sponsored. The sponsors, corporations, have expanded their promotion to the Paralympic athletes. And I think that that's just a great next step to, again, drawing attention to the athletes and the marketability, for instance, of the athletes.
Right. Yeah, well, you know that I talked with Congressman Amo this week,
Mhm.
and actually Wednesday. And when we were talking, he said it's fortuitous that we're doing this today because it's the opening of the Paralympics. And he was the one that brought it up. So all that work at bringing this into the congressional arena is good. And I think that's going to serve us well in the long run. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that now that you mentioned that, I remember that Bob Wagan, who was a former representative
Right.
of Rhode Island, was one of the people that helped us in helping move the Ted Stevens Act along.
Right. Well, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so I will get the links to put up along with the website for the Paralympics with the schedule. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Paralympics before we close?
Only that strongly recommend from those links that people watch those, that and that those that are so inclined get into local programs. And for Rhode Island, there is a program in Massachusetts. The Rhode Island program is kind of petered out. All of those people that were in the Rhode Island sports program went on to businesses and went on to become successful in other aspects of their careers. But there is a good program that has been generated in Massachusetts, and we can provide through you that information to those that are interested in getting involved in sports or in volunteering and supporting those sports.
All right, well, we will do that. I will definitely include the links. I think you're talking about New England Adaptive Sports. Is that the one?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Right, you got to get the right commercial in there, right, in order to be able to say,
Hey, I'll give them a plug. They deserve it. So,
good.
okay, so thank you so much for joining me today, Paul. This is really exciting.
It's really exciting that you were able to have me on. Thank you.
I'm happy to. Thank you for listening. I'm Annette Bourbonniere from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. Please hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. I appreciate all your comments. Tell us who you want to hear from and what issues you want to hear discussed. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends and help this podcast grow. You can find us on patreon.com/nothingwithoutus and on YouTube. And you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads. Until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette Bourbonniere.